The Middle East is on edge. Tensions have reached a boiling point, with cities across the region bracing for the unexpected. Streets that were once bustling with daily life now echo with the sound of military vehicles and the sight of armed patrols. Governments have raised security alerts to their highest levels, and ordinary citizens watch anxiously as the threat of conflict looms ever closer. Over the weekend of June 21st, 2025, the world watched as the US and Israel launched Operation Midnight Hammer, a coordinated and highly secretive air campaign targeting Iran's most critical nuclear facilities. More than 125 aircraft, including advanced B-2 stealth bombers equipped with powerful bunker-buster bombs, struck at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. The operation was designed to cripple Iran's nuclear capabilities in a matter of hours, sending shockwaves through the region and beyond. This marked a dangerous escalation in a conflict that had already been simmering for months. Israel's earlier campaign against Iran had set the stage, but this latest strike represented a new and perilous chapter, one that risked drawing in other regional powers and igniting a much broader war. President Trump, addressing the world from the White House, declared the targeted sites obliterated. Yet, behind closed doors, U.S. officials and military analysts pored over satellite images and intelligence reports, trying to determine the true extent of the damage. The uncertainty only added to the tension, as both sides weighed their next moves. Iran's response was swift and fierce. Vowing revenge, Iranian forces launched a missile at Israel, a missile that was intercepted in a dramatic display by Israel's Iron Dome defense system. In retaliation, Israeli jets struck back at Iranian military positions, escalating the tit-for-tat exchanges and raising fears of a wider regional war. The cycle of retaliation has begun, plunging the region into a new era of uncertainty. Civilians across the Middle East are glued to their televisions and phones, anxiously following every development as the specter of war grows ever more real. In a televised address, Iran's supreme leader issued a stark warning. Any further U.S. involvement would bring irreparable harm to American interests in the region. The message was clear: this conflict could spiral far beyond its current borders if not contained. Now, Iranian officials are openly debating a dramatic move: withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Such a step would signal Iran's intent to pursue nuclear weapons openly, shattering decades of international agreements and raising the stakes for the entire world. The world is watching with bated breath. At the United Nations, urgent meetings are underway as diplomats scramble to prevent the conflict from spiraling out of control. In capitals around the globe, leaders are weighing their options, hoping to contain the crisis before it engulfs the region, and perhaps the world. The stakes have never been higher. With military forces on alert, diplomatic channels strained, and the threat of nuclear escalation looming, the next moves will shape the future of the Middle East and the world for years to come. Amid the chaos, rumors of an imminent Iranian ground invasion of U.S. bases have gone viral. There's no credible evidence for this. Experts and intelligence reports dismiss it as pure fiction. Iran's military doctrine favors asymmetric tactics, not suicidal frontal assaults. These rumors thrive on social media, preying on public fear and uncertainty. The real danger isn't an imaginary invasion, but the panic and miscalculation such disinformation can provoke. In times of crisis, misinformation spreads faster than facts. Staying grounded in reality is essential. Iran's response to recent escalations has been measured, but its intent is unmistakable. In the face of mounting pressure and international scrutiny, Iranian leaders have chosen a path that balances both restraint and resolve, sending a message to adversaries and allies alike. On June 23, Iran launched a ballistic missile at Israel, a move that was swiftly intercepted, resulting in no casualties. While the missile itself did not cause physical harm, its launch was a powerful signal. Iran is willing to flex its military muscle, but is also aware of the risks of escalation. In the aftermath, Iran activated its air defenses over Tehran, responding to Israeli strikes and demonstrating its readiness for further conflict. The city braced for the worst, with sirens blaring and anti-aircraft batteries on high alert, underscoring the tense atmosphere gripping the capital. Iranian officials have since issued stern warnings, promising more retribution if provoked. Their statements are calculated to keep adversaries on edge, maintaining a delicate balance between deterrence and escalation. This approach mirrors Iran's response after the 2020 killing of General Qasem Soleimani, a dramatic show of force, but one carefully calibrated to avoid triggering an all-out war. The memory of that night when missiles rained down but casualties were limited still shapes Iran's military doctrine today. Yet, the most significant threat may not come from missiles, but from words. Iran's public consideration of leaving the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty has sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. Such a move would mark a dramatic shift in regional security dynamics. Exiting the NPT would remove key international barriers to developing nuclear weapons, raising the stakes for the entire region, and potentially igniting a new arms race in the Middle East. Iran's message is clear. Continued military threats and pressure may push it to seek a nuclear deterrent, fundamentally altering the balance of power in the region. The world now faces a new and more dangerous level of risk. Diplomats scramble to contain the crisis, but the stakes have never been higher. As tensions mount, every decision and every statement could have far-reaching consequences. The next move, whether diplomatic or military, could reshape the Middle East for years to come. Experts agree. Iran will retaliate, but carefully. Limited missile strikes on U.S. bases in Iraq, Qatar, Kuwait, or the UAE are likely, enough to show strength, but not enough to trigger all-out war. The U.S. has warned Iran that further escalation will bring more American involvement. Iran may also activate proxy militias in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen to attack U.S. or allied interests, using plausible deniability. Cyber attacks and targeted operations are also on the table. The goal: impose costs on the U.S. and show that conflict won't be confined to Iran. This multi-pronged approach keeps adversaries guessing and the region on edge. The shadow war could intensify across multiple fronts. The world braces for unpredictable escalation. Iran's most powerful non-military weapon isn't a missile or a warship, it's geography. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway just 21 miles wide at its tightest point, is the world's most critical energy choke point. Every day, nearly a fifth of all global oil, about 20 million barrels, passes through these waters, linking the massive oil fields of the Persian Gulf to markets in Asia, Europe, and beyond. For decades, this slender passage has been both a lifeline for the global economy and a pressure point in international politics. Iranian hardliners have repeatedly threatened to close the strait, brandishing the possibility of using naval mines, fast attack boats, and anti-ship missiles to block the flow of oil. These threats aren't just bluster, they're backed by regular military drills and a formidable arsenal positioned along the Iranian coastline, making the strait a potential flashpoint at any moment. The U.S. Navy, along with its allies, maintains a constant presence in the region, ready to respond if Iran ever tries to make good on its threats. While the U.S. could likely reopen the strait using overwhelming force, any military confrontation here risks spiraling into a wider conflict, with devastating consequences for the global economy and regional stability. Even a brief closure or disruption would send shockwaves through world markets. Oil prices would spike overnight, fueling inflation and economic uncertainty far beyond the Middle East. Energy importing nations would scramble to secure alternative supplies, while shipping companies would face delays and rising insurance costs. But Iran itself would pay a steep price for closing the strait. The country relies on these same waters to export its own oil, and a shutdown would choke off vital revenue. It would also risk alienating key partners like China, who depend on Iranian oil and value stability in the region. Most security analysts agree that a full, prolonged closure is unlikely, too costly for all sides. However, the risk of a short-term disruption, whether by accident or design, remains very real. Even rumors of trouble can rattle markets and heighten tensions. That's why the U.S. and its allies conduct regular joint naval drills, maintain surveillance, and keep warships on patrol, always prepared to respond at a moment's notice to any threat against this vital artery. The Strait of Hormuz remains a place where economic lifelines and military might intersect, a global flashpoint where the stakes are nothing less than the world's energy security. The conflict's impact hit global markets instantly. Oil prices surged 10% after the strikes. Brent crude briefly topped $80 a barrel, reflecting fears of supply disruption. A wider conflict or strait closure could push prices toward $100, threatening global recovery. Higher energy costs would fuel inflation and squeeze economies worldwide, especially in Europe and Asia. Shipping insurance and political risk premiums are already rising. The interconnected global economy means no country is immune. Geopolitical shocks in the Gulf can ripple across the world. For Gulf Arab states, this crisis is existential. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar and Kuwait are caught between Iran and their US protector. Their cities and infrastructure are within range of Iranian missiles. War would devastate their economies. Official statements urge restraint and diplomacy, reflecting deep anxiety. Memories of the 2019 attacks on Saudi oil facilities are fresh. Vulnerability is real. Behind the scenes, Gulf states are scrambling diplomatically and boosting defenses. For millions in cities like Dubai and Riyadh, the threat is immediate and personal. The region teeters on the brink of catastrophe. Operation Midnight Hammer has divided the world. Australia backed the US, but Europe called for restraint and diplomacy, refusing to join the strikes. In the US, the decision exposed deep political rifts, praised by some, condemned by others for bypassing Congress. Russia and China condemned the strikes, supporting Iran at the UN and warning against further escalation. China, as Iran's top oil customer, has leverage to urge restraint. The UN is a forum for debate, but consensus is elusive. Conflicting intelligence on Iran's nuclear program complicates diplomacy. The world is split. Some see the strikes as necessary, others as reckless. The risk of a wider war has never been greater. In crisis, truth is the first casualty. Sensational headlines and viral rumors like the false invasion story fuel fear and confusion. It's vital to question sources and distinguish fact from speculation. Confirmed US airstrikes on Iranian sites. Analysis: Iran likely to retaliate with limited strikes, not invasion. Responsible news consumption is a civic duty. Misinformed publics can push leaders toward rash decisions. Insist on evidence, demand facts, and resist panic. The Middle East crisis is real, but clarity, not fear, must guide our response. In an information war, facts are our best defense.